Excellent. Now, could you take us through the components of a typical succession planning model and what's involved?
Sure. The process is effective when it matches the organization's available talent to its future needs. You begin with an assessment of your organization's current and future business strategy. Understanding your competitive position in the marketplace, along with your growth goals, can help a company better define its future leadership needs.
Okay, so then when you've assessed your business strategy and established your leadership goals for the organization, what's next?
Well, you want to create a succession planning team to own and manage the process. This team will establish program objectives, such as the need to prepare future leaders for key positions in the organization and ensure the continuity of the organization. You also want to establish measures of success, such as the length of time executive positions are open before filling, the percentage of senior and departmental management positions filled internally, the retention of high potential talent, the diversity of leadership, and the ability to undertake a change of leadership without creating chaos or further attrition. Next, you want to establish a program design. You need to establish those standards for identifying talent, establish strategies for accelerating the development of the high potential talent, define the key processes and best practices for managing the succession program. And last, you want to develop an implementation plan for helping it all happen.
Excellent, Joe. How do you determine, though, what leadership traits and skills are important? I can't help but imagining that they would vary for each company.
Sure. Well, you can define what it takes to be successful in a particular job role through competencies, which are groups of skills, behavior, and knowledge that are identified as performance standards for any particular job. A set of leadership competencies will help you define the ideal executive in competency terms and give you a target by which to evaluate candidates and diagnose developmental needs.
Okay, so now we know the traits we're looking for, which helps us focus our search. But what do we do next? Do we just look to our vice presidents and other senior level managers to see who has those traits? Or are there other places within the organization to look? What if there's someone who might not be that high up in the career ladder, is what I'm trying to say, but who shows excellent leadership potential? How can you make sure that they don't fall through the cracks?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I always believe in casting a wide net when looking for individuals with leadership potential. They could be new hires or long-term employees. We use a grid to help you sort through your employees and identify those with high potential. This 9-box grid that you're looking at measures performance on the x-axis and potential on the y-axis.
And that's very, very helpful, and I understand that. But after you've assessed your employees, and then we can determine who has the high potential, as you just indicated. But how do you know if a leader from a department, for instance, like IT or marketing or finance, is going to be excellent? I mean, they're excellent at what they do, but how do we know that they're going to have the abilities to go beyond their department, to take that ability and translate it and transcend it?
Yes, and that's so important, Patrick. You want to accelerate the development of a pool of people that have high potential, building cross-functional experience and a broader perspective of the organization. One of the things that happens, or used to happen when people use the traditional replacement planning process, where senior and middle managers identified potential replacements for themselves, it didn't really work well because these people were likely to be out of touch with organizational strategies, because executives are generally searching for replacements to do the same things that they're doing. And most leadership jobs actually end up being filled from sources outside the identified replacements anyway.
So we have the high potential individuals receiving cross-functional training and then developing a broader understanding of the organization as a result. You're also suggesting, though, if I'm hearing right, that the organization has to pay attention to each individual's strengths and developmental areas.
Yes, and to diagnose their development needs, which is very important, you need to consider how someone's assessed against the competencies or the standards that have been linked to success in a particular job family or in leadership, or for leadership in general. Development activities should be focused on closing the gaps between where someone is today and where they need to be when they're promoted. In addition to a competency assessment, it's helpful to use a valid and reliable personality assessment for measuring potential to be successful in the next role, 360 assessments so that you can be assessed from a wide variety of sources, performance reviews, and behavioral interviews.
I'm gathering that this leadership development is very involved in an evolving process, and it seems that an organization simply cannot rely, however, on an individual's personal strengths and then training them and expect for things to go the right way. In other words, that's not in and of itself going to make them the leader they need to be.
Yeah, you're correct, Patrick. Training does not tend to stick unless the skills or tools and techniques that were imparted are applied immediately and used often. So experiential assignments have more impact than training.
Experiential assignments. I'd like to get some more thoughts on that. I mean, I know that they can help prepare an individual to lead an organization, but are there any other methods that organizations can implement in order to ensure that high potential leaders will be effective in the future?
Yes, well, I think it's really about including some combination of all the components we've listed today. Coaching is important, mentoring, developing skills, but using those skills immediately so that they stick. Offering stretch assignments within the organization, and giving people that kind of cross-functional experience, which, as you mentioned before, with the IT, the marketing leaders, you want to be able to develop them outside their functional area once they become a top leader in the organization.
And it's not enough to simply pick the person you want to lead and train them, but making sure that the individual is fully prepared.
That's right. One of the things we always really focus on in the succession management program is the development itself. When companies were using a traditional replacement plan approach, people would be identified, but nothing much was done to prepare them to move up to that next position. Instead of simply naming a person as a successor, organizations need to implement action learning programs where a pool of high potential people get together and work on real and urgent business problems in order to develop themselves as leaders. In action learning, 50% is about solving problems and 50% is about developing leaders in real time.
And what sort of impact can that sort of leadership development have on an organization?
Well, companies of all sizes are dependent on a conscientious, reliable, and appropriately skilled workforce. But at medium and smaller firms, typically with less than 500 employees or revenues under $500 million, the cost of losing and replacing staff is dramatically clear. The cost of turnover in these firms averages over $230,000 a year. The sunk cost in training per year is over $360,000 on average, and those who are trained can walk out the door at any time.
In our few remaining moments, Joe, before we get to some audience questions, let me just ask you, what is the most important point you'd like people to leave with about leadership development and succession planning?
Well, in light of the fact that the first year of a succession management program is the most difficult and it's the most closely observed, I would highly recommend utilizing the services of an external consultant with experience and expertise in succession management. And I'd also recommend that you always utilize feedback and the experiences that you have to continually improve the program.
Terrific. Certainly what I carry away from this is that beyond creating a vision and inspiring those around them, the best leaders need to find their replacements, and that's really part of their job. Let's open it up now. Thank you so much, Joe. That was so informative. Let's open it up to some questions from our audience.